Just waiting for Reverend Aaron Long to arrive. We have been discussing Turretin. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, Bishop Robinson. Hey, Donald.
How is Peter Robinson doing?
He is doing well. He is dealing with the stuff with Haverland. He's dealing with that snake Morrell. Morrell is doing his best to blow up the denomination after Morrell went after us. Now he's going after the church in Branson, which is their biggest congregation once I was gone. And I've never seen somebody with a purple shirt be as stupid as Morrell is. Morrell is demanding that he be allowed to do a visitation at the church, even though the vestry and the priest both say no.
He's UECNA
Yeah.
and he's an Anglo-Catholic.
And the strange thing about it is he's not actually even Anglo-Catholic as such. As far as his worship stylings, he's relatively low church, even though he's an Arminian. He comes out of the holiness movement and he became Anglican. He is also a dispensationalist.
Oh, my word.
So what you've got is functionally a low church Arminian dispensationalist with an Anglo-Catholic view on the episcopacy.
What a weirdo. Not very well trained. Where'd he go to school?
I'm not really quite sure. I know he could not get his own church. He's never actually served a church. He's one that Peter inherited that came from one of those little Episcopalian break-off bodies that ended up folding after a little bit, and he was the last man standing. He got consecrated a bishop outside of the UECNA and then came in. And
What's Peter? So he's a nobody, but a big mouth.
yes,
Where's he got a church?
he doesn't have one, never has.
Unbelievable.
But because he came in consecrated, and they are using those 1958 canons, which Peter is slowly discovering is the problem. The rot in the Episcopal Church had started all the way back then. And basically, by 1958, the Episcopalians had developed, Peter uses the term the Purple Club, that the bishops had ensconced in the canons basically protections to where nobody could really bring functional charges against them. And he said after Pike, the bishops sort of they rounded up the wagons to make themselves untouchable, if that makes any sense.
Yep. The REC did the same thing by re-altering their canons so that only a bishop can bring a charge against a bishop.
Right.
Presbyter, deacon, or layman cannot. It used to be that a layman could bring charges against a bishop, but they created these roadblocks to holding superiors, as it were, accountable. And of course, that hindered the laymen, the deacons, and the presbyters.
All right. Donald, do you have a plan for today?
Just a few introductory matters, and then maybe hoping. Why? Do you have something different?
I wanted to wrap up Alinsky today. And
Okay.
and there's a way that I want to wrap him up that I think we can do using events that occurred last week and showing how this has worked its way into the culture and what the solution to the problem could be.
Yeah, I have stopped further reading on Alinsky. He's just a liar, and the ends justify the means, and he's willing to use deceit, duplicity, lying to get ahead. And I have no time for that kind of a man.
Well, my thing is it's not that I care about him. It's that he has created this influence that is cascaded down in all of our systems within the church and within the culture in general that we have to deal with. And I'd use it to start off with just talking about the bishop situation we just brought up. Basically, what you see in the Episcopal Church is the bishops as a whole bought into this concept. So what they've done is they've taken what should be in the early church an esteemed, respected position of level-headed and wise men, and they have turned it into a political office that is power is gathered, if that makes any sense, by any means necessary.
Like Fennec,
Like Sutton,
like Sutton. Yep.
like John Shelby Spong. I can go on and on.
Okay,
But
well, you take the lead then in this Alinsky thing.
all
Although
right,
I did want to, before we start,
okay,
ask about Robinson and Haverland. What's going on there?
all right. Haverland has just, I told you about the letter before. Haverland has just basically come out and said the UECNA, because it leans into its Protestant heritage, isn't really Anglican, and he has severed any form of communion, which I mean, Peter doesn't really care about, but it's like Haverland is saying because the UECNA will not subscribe to the St. Louis Affirmation, it's not actually Anglican.
Okay.
And Peter's response is if you read St. Louis is a denial of the formularies. And because what St. Louis actually says is that the document says it trumps the formularies.
Okay. Tractarian.
And Peter said that even if he doesn't always, even if there's not always complete theological agreement, once you remove the formularies, there is no definition for Anglicanism at all. It just becomes completely freeform.
Yeah.
And he said, once you replace the prayer book with the missal, you have lost anything that is actually Anglican.
By the way, Butthead Brett Murphy
Yeah.
put out on Facebook an open invitation to Haverland to come on his program and have an open discussion about Calvin Romanist Robinson. But Haverland won't condescend to Butthead, the blowhard.
Well, Haverland won't condescend because Haverland doesn't understand the modern game, and Murphy would eat his lunch. Haverland is hiding behind his mitre and behind his pen because if he were to actually set foot into the realm of combat, he would get chewed up and spit out.
And yet Butthead Brett has his old Catholic bishop as a member and leader in his church who's old Catholic, which is he's a Tridentist,
right?
Without Vatican I. And also this bishop in Butthead's church, along with a Roman bishop, the two of them ordained 4 priests, their use of the word, according to the Roman rite. So that tells you something about Butthead, the blowhard.
They're no longer Anglican.
They're just, you're exactly right.
I mean, I'm sorry, Peter is dead right, no matter how we spin it. Once you remove the formularies, you have no right to call yourself an Anglican. And once the 39 articles in the prayer book at minimum, and notice I'm saying at minimum, are gone.
Yeah, I got you.
You are no longer Anglican. There is no tie whatsoever. Now, I know there's some old high church that would lean Lutheran. I know that I would argue the 39 articles lean reformed, but once you remove that bare minimum, you cannot honestly claim Anglicanism in any way, shape, or form, because that's what defines Anglicanism.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll step aside and you got the lead on Alinsky.
All right. Last week, what we saw with the two killings that occurred, both the Ukrainian lady in Charlotte and Charlie Kirk, are the natural fruit of what Alinsky's vanguardism was leading to. With the man that shot Charlie Kirk, you have a man that was raised in a strong traditional Christian household that got radicalized by the modern education system.
We think.
Yeah, well, I would actually pretty much argue based on the evidence that has been presented, but I don't want to go into the weeds on that right now.
Okay.
What you see with the Ukrainian lady being stabbed in Charlotte is the weakening of the mental health care system, because that man had been arrested 24 times.
No. I think it was 14 times.
Okay, 14, excuse me.
But still.
Right. And you saw three people sit there and watch it happen.
Yeah, that too.
Because what you have is racial divides that have been created. You have basically a castration of American society.
Let me just take a detour for a minute.
Okay.
I was flying into Dallas Airport one time, and as I'm walking through, there's this crowd gathered around.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of this crowd, and there was some distance, there was this guy, big guy, bearded guy, choking some younger, he was an adult, but young, skinny guy by the throat, was lifting him up like this. And nobody did anything.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I saw it, I jumped over this little like fence that they had not, it was really low. It wasn't, big high fence, but I jumped over and I raised my fist at him and I said, "You let him go or I'm going to take you down." And he let him go. And the guy dropped to the ground and was gasping for air. Meanwhile, Dallas police came and began to engage with it. And one of the police or security officers said to me, "It's very normal for people not to get involved, and what you did was good."
Mm-hmm.
But I was shocked at the time that nobody intervened whatsoever, men or women. And I was the only guy who instinctively reacted to defend this assault. But anyways, back to the story. And yeah, those three people sat there when that girl in Charlotte was getting stabbed. Nothing.
Well, it's because it's the castration of society, which is part of the vanguardist system. And I'm not going to go into real deep on that, because the thing is if you go back to my grandparents' generation, that they all fought in World War II, you would never see something like that. These people, there's a famous saying, and I know you've heard it, when the Emperor of Japan was asked if he would ever invade the United States, and he said no, because there's a gun behind every blade of grass.
Okay.
That is what we used to be. But what has happened is we have slowly been neutered. We have been neutered by the system itself. We see it coming to its culmination with the LGBT movement, with the transgender movement, with all of that. But it's been a long time coming. And what this is the rise of Marxism within the United States, that has been pushed along by the Frankfurt School, that has been pushed along by the Fabian Socialist in England, that has been pushed along by the European Union, that has been pushed along by all the powers that be. and I talked about this in my 2 Bible studies last week, where I used the term the frog was boiled. And ultimately, people didn't realize they were that America was slowly becoming a socialist state.
Yeah,
And,
look what's going on in New York City with Mondami. I can't believe that.
but see, it already was.
Yeah.
The moment that we saw a period of time where over 50% of the employed people in the United States were employed by federal, state, or local government in some way, shape, or form, which we are. And that's not even counting the healthcare sector, which has functionally become a branch of the government due to the FDA, due to Obamacare, and all the rest of it. The majority of the employees of the United States are all governmental employees. We live in a Marxist system, and nobody realizes it.
You know, Mark Levin, whom I'm reading on Marxism, is making your exact point, in that it starts in the education, lower education, academia, and
Right.
other spheres of life.
And I want to say this real quick. I still haven't got that book in. When I'm making that statement, I'm not stealing it from Mark Levin.
I got you. Yeah.
I've actually got the book on order, and it's evidently become so popular, it's back ordered. So I'm still waiting on my copy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's a good book and a lot of research and a lot of scholarly quotations, but he's making the same point that you're making here.
Vanguardism, especially Frankfurt School and Alinskyite vanguardism, has completely corrupted us and turned us into a socialist state. It has destroyed Western Europe and turned Western Europe into almost a communist state. I mean, in England, you no longer have freedom of speech.
Yeah, it's getting bad over there.
Right. We are not the land of the free and the home of the brave anymore, and it's happened because they boiled the frog and they neutered us in the process. I think Alinsky is trash, personally.
Yeah.
That said, I'm a pragmatist. Whereas I would say Peter is the historian, and I tell this to Peter all the time, because I use you and Peter as examples of pure academics.
Ah,
You are a pure theologian. Peter is a pure historian. I love theology. I love history. But when the rubber hits the road, I've been a local pastor for going on 24 years now. I am by nature a pragmatist. I do study history. I do deeply study theology. But what I want to know is what works and what is the
well,
solution.
I was just reading Ursinus this morning on the Trinity, and he got so super wonky that I'm going, wow, how do I explain this to a young catechumen? But he's very, very deep theologically.
Well, and the thing is, this is why we need to be broadly read. This is why not everybody is perfect on everything. I personally prefer the Heidelberg as my central catechism because it is much more personal.
Yes.
But as far as going deeper into the subject matter, I am always going to defer to, I'm actually going to defer to Lombard first and then Turretin second, because Lombard codifies Augustine in a way where if you read Lombard, you're really reading Augustine's thought on things. And instead of going through those massive volumes, because Augustine is wordy. I love Augustine, but he likes to hear himself talk.
I have read through his entire corpus twice, 100 volumes, and I'm not going to do it again.
And I'm not knocking him. I love Augustine, but he just likes to hear himself talk a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I always defer to Lombard, because Lombard basically strains out all the stuff and he takes what's important, if you've ever gone through the sentences.
I have
But
not gone through the sentences.
But the thing is ultimately, I want a solution. I have identified the problem, and the problem is that we have allowed Christendom to decay, and we have allowed a form of secular socialism to become our religion. Well, here is the question. How do we fix this?
Let
How do
me
we
let,
fix our denominations? How do we fix our culture? How do we fix our society?
let me just throw out on this Charlie Kirk thing that there is a widespread movement going on about the importance of Christ and Christianity, aside from his political and social views, that is really stark. And they had 3,500 chapters, 1,200 in high schools and 2,500 on campuses. Now they've got 38,000, like 1,000% increase on requests for Kirk's Turning Point USA for high schools and universities. With this, part of it is the Christian focus. So I don't know where that goes culturally, socially, and theologically.
All right. Kirk is sort of like Billy Graham on, I've gone through and researched it
Oh, okay,
on
good.
the theology on all this. He is distinctively Christian. See, Kirk was a member of the Calvary Chapel.
Yes, which is kind of Pentecostalish.
Well,
Well,
and it comes from that.
yeah,
And because see, I use Greg Laurie's, Greg Laurie's New Believers Bible. It's a New Living Translation. Greg Laurie, who is sort of the founder of all that, does a real good job in summarizing the core tenets of Christianity. It does have a American evangelical bent, but it's not bad. It's like reading Haley. Nothing in it's wrong. There's just no distinct. It's almost like eating, this is going to sound like a strange comparison. It's eating vanilla ice cream. It's good, but there's nothing. You're laughing. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do. Yeah.
And I have no problem with it. There's nothing heretical in it, nothing outright in error in it, because they don't touch on the sacraments, they don't touch on election predestination. It's just a basic, straightforward presentation of creedal Christianity. Now, it's not your 50, it's not your 21 forms of unity. It's just it's vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
But it's getting to what the solution needs to be. We have to rebuild Christendom if we want Western society to continue existing. And
I'm listening very closely now because you're a pragmatist.
for the individual, what that means is they have to commit themselves to several things. They have to commit themselves, one, to biblical inerrancy,
Ah,
because they have to be able to adopt a biblical worldview. And without biblical inerrancy, you cannot adopt a biblical worldview.
I'm thinking of opening up a line of inquiry with B.B. Warfield on his book Revelation and Inspiration. It's been years since I read it. It's a wonky, he says Warfield is often so wonky that you get lost in the woods, but it goes to this issue. And I noticed yesterday when looking at Prof. A. Hodges' commentary on the Westminster Confession that he uses those very words: infallibility, inerrancy, inspiration, without error.
I honestly think for our sola scriptura discussion, I would actually go with Sproul's writings on it because it's more digestible. I think that that actually is going to build on the Sola Scriptura in a much better way.
Which volume are you thinking of?
I'll have to look at it when I get home. I got all my Sproul at the house. But anyway, for the individual, there first of all has to be a commitment to biblical inerrancy. And after biblical inerrancy, there needs to be a double commitment to the local congregation and to the local congregation's confessional statement. I understand that different churches are going to have different confessional statements. Right now, what I'm saying is that there needs to be a solid, universally agreed upon confessional statement. This is how we read the Bible. I mean, and people say, well, there weren't confessions during Christendom before the Reformation. Yes, there were.
Sure there was.
I mean, there were the creeds themselves, there were the ecumenical councils. Lombard sentences was the required reading for all priests. If that's not a confessional statement, I don't know what it is. It's long, but in order to get a doctorate, you had to write a commentary on Lombard sentences. Luther had to do it. Aquinas had to do it. I mean, I've got volumes of Aquinas's commentary on the sentences. But we have to create in the individual a biblical worldview. And that will only happen through commitment to inerrancy, commitment to the creeds, commitment to the confessions, and commitment to the local church. And by commitment to the local church, we have to get people to understand the local church is not a voluntary organization, it is a family. Because in ministry, the biggest problem local pastors face, whether they realize it or not, isn't error, it isn't heresy. Error and heresy can be handled with solid teaching and with a backbone. That's a whole nother thing. A set of nuts and a backbone will fix error and heresy.
Somebody with a pastor who needs a wheelbarrow to carry his
Right.
package.
Right. But the biggest problem local pastors face that those things won't overcome is the mindset of the laity that treat church like it is a voluntary social organization. They treat church like it's the Lions Club. They treat church like it's the Rotarians. They treat church, and this is going to sound strange coming out of me, like the majority of Masons treat the lodge. The majority of Masons don't buy into all the crazy Gnostic neo crap, even though they unknowingly participate in it. The majority of Masons treat the lodge like it's a boys' club.
Yeah.
They go to a place where they can drink and hang out.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is most modern Christians treat the church the exact same way. If I can show up, I'll show up. I'll throw some money in the pot. I can get buried in the graveyard. I can do this, that, or the other. But the thing is when you adopt that mentality, you're not actually a part of the church. The church is a family. The local congregation is a family. And it's like I tell them every day, every Sunday, you don't cease being Paul's Chapel when you leave this building. If you're not willing to show up on a Wednesday evening or a Thursday morning, or you're not willing to come to the work days on a Friday or participate in events, how can you really claim to be a member of the church? Sunday morning is the icing on the cake. It's not the main meal.
I got you.
But if we're going to fix the problem, there has to be these three commitments from the individual. Now, people will argue with me that doesn't address any of the problems, and I would say it addresses all the problems. Because the moment you get individuals to make the three commitments to the inerrancy of Scripture, to the creeds and confessions, and to the local church, then you start to develop a Christian worldview within the individual over against the secular worldview. Now, the second part of all this goes to the local church. The local church needs to quit being a holy huddle. Most local churches don't look beyond their own doors.
That's not helped by the R2K men at Westminster Escondido that
Correct.
treats the church like a holy huddle with no impact outside its own doors.
They're no better than the dispensationalists.
Yeah.
I've said they're heretics for years and nobody wants to hear me. But I have a banner over the door at the top of the ramp, if you've ever seen it on the way out, that says you are now entering your mission field.
And my church has the same thing. Same kind of sign as you drive out of the parking lot.
And the thing is the local church has to quit treating its main mission as Sunday morning. Sunday morning is important. Please do not think I'm taking away from worship.
I got you.
But that has to cease being its focus.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, with the solid liturgy and a preacher that can preach, should be able to take care of itself and should be able to run on autopilot. What the local church has got to do is it's got to start re-engaging with the community. That's number one. It's got to start adopting Boy Scout or Girl Scout troops, or if you don't feel like doing that, adopting these new trailblazers or whatever the conservative alternative is, Trail Life. Adopt these things. Get involved in that. It needs to get involved in homeless ministry. It needs to get involved in tutoring ministries. It needs a preschool. It needs a church school, which leads into my second point. The local churches have to start investing in Christian education.
Yeah, we've got a really good school, Baptistic in orientation. They use, I forget the curriculum now, but my pastor, Associate Reformed Presbyterian, sends two of his three children to this. It's called Liberty Academy. I forget this curriculum, but it's one of the conservative Bible curriculums. And they give him, because of the state of North Carolina, they gave him like $7,000 per child, $14,000 to cover the school expenses. And my pastor's comfortable because they try to be biblical, form a biblical worldview, but it's a very good school in this area. I just wish, and it's very big, but we're kind of out in Richlands, about 10 miles away from Camp Lejeune. Needs to be another one on the other side of town. The word needs to get out for other parents that you can get basically your tuition covered by this school choice program of North Carolina.
But all right.
And that's wonderful.
We have a preschool. I see it up here like yesterday morning. I sit up here and I've got a child's Bible and I read children's Bible stories to the kids once a week. Whoa. The director reads Bible stories to them every other week. Every other day, excuse me. They pray
at your church?
Yes. We have been actively working on getting a homeschool co-op to meet here.
Whoa. Cool.
We have to engage as a church. Education needs to be one of the pillars of our engagement. But not only education, social interaction. It used to be the social welfare, the safety net, social safety net of America was its churches. We didn't need Social Security. We didn't need welfare. We didn't need SNAP programs because the churches stepped in. And I'm going to tell you from my time as a pastor, I have learned the local churches, if they will get off their lazy ass, pardon my language, and do it.
I'm an old Marine sailor, so I've heard a lot worse than that, boy, I'll tell you, including that
Actually,
illustration of the wheelbarrow to carry the man's package.
if the churches will get up and do it, they actually do a better job than the federal organizations. And I'll give you an example.
By the
Eight,
way, Charlie Kirk said his money was on the homeschooled kids.
mhm.
The future.
8 years ago, we started a disadvantaged children's program, which we're trying to start back because and I'm not going to go into the theory on that. We're not large enough to have a consistent turnover. So we have to go through cohorts, which means every 7 to 10 years we have to rebuild the program, which I'm not actually against because it allows you to step back, see what you did wrong the last time, readjust. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
But first year we established Faith Youth Initiative. We went into I told the church I'm not going more than 2.5 miles either direction from the church because I do not want to impinge upon where other local churches should be operating in their ministry. I want to operate within my parish, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Well, there's two trailer parks. One is filled with Hispanics, which actually got me thinking about it because I got caught behind a school bus and counted 37 Hispanic kids getting on the school bus from that one trailer park. And I was like, I wonder if they go to church anywhere. The other is mostly white, lower class, lower class, and it's the other direction. Well, in the white trailer park, we came across 3 girls whose mother was employed in the world's oldest profession. Well, we brought them in not only to the program, but into the tutoring program we had, and we found out all 3 of them were failing.
All were what?
Failing in school. They were in the elementary school.
Gotcha.
So I did some research and I went and I knew some teachers at Welcome Elementary, and it turns out they weren't failing because of their grades. They were failing because one of the girls had missed 27 days worth of school in one semester. Hold on. One had missed 17 and one had missed 16. So I thought maybe it's the mother. And when I went and talked to the mother said, no, I send them to school and they keep sending them back with lice. The girls had lice.
LICE?
LICE. Well, you know me, Donald, that got me rankled real quick because there's a social worker at that school. So I walked all up in the elementary school and they had to escort me out because I informed the social worker in no small words, probably language a pastor shouldn't use, that maybe if she's scared, she asked her why she hadn't gone to the trailer and addressed the problem. That's what she gets paid for. And she said she was scared of lice.
Yeah.
And I told her, you are in the wrong job if you are a social worker at an elementary school and you're scared of lice. So I went to the Department of Social Services. And I spent the better part of a week going down there every day, and they kept turning me away until I told their director to his face, little gay guy, I can sit down here every day. And if you really want me to raise the stink, I can go talk to the county commissioners, and I don't mind crawling the ranks up. What are they going to do? I don't work for them. They work for me. They're the part of the government. So eventually they fired the social worker, but they never actually did anything. It was the church that had to call Terminex to go into the house and pay for the trial. Do you know what I'm saying?
I got you. I'm following.
And it showed me that the church more effectively addresses these issues than any governmental agency. We delivered food for up until 23. We had a van ministry to where we took food to people that were in need. Well, the question was asked, why, if there's all these SNAP benefits and EBTs and things like that, while we were doing that? It was like, because all the government does is throw money at these people and they will end up selling their EBT and getting drugs and everything else. The problem is they're hungry. So we took them food. We actually address the local church, if it works the right way, can actually address these social problems much better than the government. These children that were coming from broken homes and parents with drug addicts, we were able to partner them up with older members of the church, and they had mentors, and they had I go back to the church being a family. And I still hear from these kids that we got people out of the homeless shelter. We got them apartments. We got them jobs. I've got a whole list of success stories. When I was on the board down at the homeless shelter in Lexington, because the church engaged.
I got you.
The local church has to engage with society, because what we've done is we have allowed these socialists. I'm no longer going to call them progressives. I'm no longer going to call them leftists. I'm not even going to call them Democrats or Republicans, because I think the whole lot of them are nothing more than Fabian socialists that play games. They're Trotskyites that play games with people. If they're not going to do the job, the church needs to stand up and do it. That's how Christendom formed in the first place. The monasteries, the local congregations did this work amongst the people.
Yeah.
The individuals have to be committed to a Christian worldview. The local church has to be committed to actually being the church instead of claiming that they're a church. And finally, the denominations need to be purged of all the trash that is accumulated at their upper levels. And that's only going to happen when the local churches start cutting off money and start voting in leadership that will actually do the job. What use is Haverland if he doesn't have any money to do anything? What use is Sutton if he doesn't have any money to do anything? And they'll say, oh, but we're required to do this, that, or the other. Just stop sending it. What are they going to do? They don't have the government on their side to force you to do it.
Vote with the pocketbook and the feet.
Right. We have to correct the problems in the denomination with a solid statement. Either you strictly hold to the confession and you actively pursue Christian ministry and you do something to earn your paycheck, or we're going to get rid of you. As we do these things, what it will do is it will start a seed change in the communities. And hear me out real quick. When you have an individual that is solidly committed to a Christian worldview and a church that is solidly committed to local ministry, not overseas, local ministry, and you have a denomination that gets purged of all of its free riders and its trash, these people will go out and they will vote. And we still live in America. As we shape our members will shape society. As the church engages in local ministry and they see the government they have pushing back on their local church, it will change the way they view an example of this is in Davison County. The county commissioners are all in it for themselves. So they voted through this $65 million project to build a sports complex in Southmont because they own paving companies and things like this. It's all corruption. They're all basically voting to pay themselves the $65 million.
Gotcha.
Well, they realized real quick they broke the budget. So what they did is they made an excuse to start charging property tax on nonprofits. And I specifically say nonprofits because they come after the churches, but they're also coming after volunteer fire departments and other nonprofits. It's not just the church, even though the church is included. Nobody knew about this until we got a tax bill for a little lot that we've got that was given by a church member that's on the other side of the road. And I mean, I heard about it and I was like, we're a church, we're not supposed to pay property tax.
Yeah.
So I went down and confronted them and they explained this all to me that the church wasn't using it. It's on the other side of the road. It's not part of the contiguous property. It's not actually used for religious purposes. That's when I dug and I found out it's actually because corrupt county commissioners had actually bankrupted the county. And once the local congregation found out we were being charged property tax, all of a sudden there's an uproar that starts going around and they start to network with people they know in other churches. And the whole thing's been discovered. And there's probably going to be about 2/3 of our county commissioners that get voted out of office next election around. Once you fix the individual and you fix the local church, we know from church history that the problems will correct itself up the ladder. Because once people have a solid Christian worldview, and once the local church is interacting, it will force all the demons out of their hidey holes. All of a sudden, things will start to change. Because what is it Jesus said in John? I always love to tell people all the time, never read John 3:16 out of context. You have to read John 3:16 through John 3:21 because Jesus said he came to bring the light and those who were in the light would be saved, but men love the darkness more than the light.
Yeah.
Once the light has been introduced, it's why Jesus says we're to be the salt. The salt preserves, but the salt also irritates. We're to be the light. The light does bring enlightenment, but people love their evil deeds and would rather do them in the darkness. Once the individual has a solid Christian worldview and the church is committed to doing what it's supposed to do, the church will start to show light on the problems in society and the individual will react in the proper way.
Well, this brings us back to Charlie Kirk and his engagements with the culture over and over, again and again, and speaking emphatically of his faith and his worldview.
Right. We have to do that. We have to grow a set again and get out there and be Christians. I believe in evangelism programs and all that, and there's good ones and there are bad ones. But ultimately, biblically, the best form of evangelism that exists is going out, being a Christian, and inviting people to church.
That's what they say in studies. That people come to a church because of a friend who invites them.
Right. And they try to put it on the pastor and they try to put it on an evangelism committee or team. But ultimately, evangelism is the duty of all saved Christians. And it's not hard. I tell them all the time, I don't mind if you memorize the Roman road or some other thing, but ultimately get them through the doors. God's going to work through the word preached and the word read. God's going to work through his sacraments. Get them into the building and let God do the work. That's going to be much more effective. And the best way of doing it is by the church engaging with the community and by the individual being committed to a Christian worldview.
It kind of comes back to my work, which I talked about at your church with the Westminster Confession. I would
Right,
invite people to come to learn the Christian faith, not to commit to it,
right.
hear of it, so they could freely make their own decision. And I had lots of guys come to me afterwards and say, I'm so thankful you said that because you didn't jam it down my throat. You just put it out there and so I could assess it.
Mhm.
I had a lot of people come to the Bible study every day at noon hour, 30 to 40. And a lot of who became Christians just by finding out what that worldview was. 6 of them went on to be PCA elders.
But it's got to be day by day
Yep,
doing grunt work in the trenches. We don't need generals, we need sergeants.
yep. And
We
any good general knows that it's the sergeants and staff sergeants who win the war.
we don't need special forces. We need infantry troops.
And I remember a captain on a carrier who understood firmly that the chiefs, the E7 and the E6s, run the Navy,
Mhm.
not the officers so much. And I remember I may have told you this story about being in Vicenza, Italy, and we were anchored out, and the officers had gone ashore on liberty, and the chiefs had gone on shore on liberty. There were 1 or 2 officers left to monitor the ship and 1 or 2 chiefs, but basically the leadership was gone. And I had to do Sunday morning sermon before going on liberty.
Mhm.
And the captain and the medical doctor, we went to church. I did the service on the ship. We got in the boat. We were anchored out. And this is up on the northwestern coast, up toward Genoa.
Mhm.
We went ashore and got onto the pier, and the captain got a call and said, You've got to return to the boat. We have an op immediate message, which means it's the presidential 911.
Mhm.
Got back in the utility boat, went to the ship, and the 911 call was get to the Persian Gulf fast, immediately. So the captain pulled the anchor up with all the chiefs and the officers ashore, and it was basically the E6s, E5s,
Mhm.
E6s, remaining few E7s who turned the ship on, turned the ship around, and we sailed full flank speed down the western coast of Italy and left all those officers and chiefs ashore. And it took us a while to get down south of Sicily.
Mhm.
And the Italian Navy had gathered up the officers and chiefs and put them on trains and sailed them immediately to Sicily and the Naval Air Station in Sicily. And then they started flying the chiefs and the officers
But
on
they
board,
weren't needed.
but they weren't needed. It was the E5s, E6, which would be sergeant, staff sergeant in the Army, that clearly could run and drive the ship.
All right. Well, I got to let you go, Donald. We talked enough about my pet projects. You can put us on where we need to be next Friday, coming Friday.
Okay, sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.